Hello, folks. It's June 10th, 2021. This is the Backdrop Weekly Developers Call. We get together every week to talk about priorities for Backdrop. This week is a special one where we are going to be looking at priorities for the 1.20 release. The release will be coming out in September. But before we dive in too deep, we're going to do some introductions. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet, and I'm a core committer, and I live in Oakland, California. Let's get an introduction from Greg, please.
Hi, my name is Greg. I'm usually in Australia, but now joining from Greece. Interested in anything related to Backdrop, and this meeting is going to be interesting as well because we're going to decide on certain of the features that we're going to push for. Yeah, that's it. Tim?
My name is Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. And yeah, nothing new to say. I'm here to hear what our priorities are. Thank you. Olaf.
I'm Olaf Gorbienski from Hamburg in Germany. And yeah, I'm part of the project management committee of Backdrop. I also care sort of the localization server or translation server for Backdrop. So if you have any question regarding translations, please ping me in Zoodlib, for example. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this meeting. I don't see everyone else
Robert.
because I'm on the phone, so I don't see.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet from Altadena, California. And I have no particular agenda item today for once. And I'll pass it to Justin.
I'm Justin Christopherson. I'm in Denver, Colorado. And I volunteer for infrastructure services and help out wherever I can.
Jen's
Great.
Jen.
Me,
Jen.
I'm last. I'm Jen Lambton, joining from Oakland, California. As I mentioned in the last meeting, I've been super busy in Backdrop Contrib land the last few weeks. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. Also because I'm working on Drupal, the Backdrop upgrade. So hopefully I'll help make that process less painful in this job too, which will be great. I think that's it. Should I roll into contributed project updates? So did you guys talk about flex slider paragraphs last week?
No, I think we skipped the whole section last week. So
oh, well, maybe I should do more modules than this. Anyway, I was really excited when I saw that Backdrop got a flex slider paragraphs port. So anyway, that's ready. We also have gallery tiler and field default token, which were both came out this week. So that's great. And then let's see. Oh, I don't have the link anymore. Oh, there it is. Just really quick, I'm checking to see if there's anything else. So last week, so this would go all the way back to May 27th. Views summarize. You talking about views summarize?
Nope.
No, views summarize is out. And I know we talked about image magic before that. So I think that's all of them. Redirect import. Oh, right. I did that one too. Yeah, if you want to import your redirects in CSV format, that's ready. So yeah, lots of stuff going on in Contrib.
great. There are also some website updates, and I think we're trying to get to the 1.20 portion of the meeting, but there's been some activity that's important to note. The main backdropcms.org web server that runs pretty much everything in Backdrop's infrastructure was upgraded to PHP 7.4. Thank you, Justin, for doing that upgrade and keeping our servers up to date. There have been a couple of hiccups, though. The packager was briefly broken, and sandbox demos also were affected for a little while. Both of those things are corrected now. But if there are any other parts of the website that anyone in the community notices that there is an issue, you can get a hold of Justin on Zulip. He's Lars Designs. Did you just grimace, Justin? Or you can write an email to info@backdropcms.org if you want to just reach a large group of people to make sure that somebody gets your message. That's the best contact location. Let's see. There's also a note here about the events site. Maybe Tim, is that, or Jen, is that something that you guys would like to mention?
Just we're going to be working on it this weekend to try and open registration for Backdrop Live.
Which is, do we have a date?
July.
Then is it?
Like 9th, 10th, somewhere around there.
Yes.
Early
9th.
mid-July. Okay.
Basically a month from
July
now. It's
9th
on.
and 10th.
Did you get it? What is it, Jen?
July 9th and 10th.
Okay.
Depends where
just
you are on the planet. I mean.
to elaborate slightly, we'll be sort of be sprinting on just getting a few things ready for Backdrop Live on Sunday at 1 o'clock Pacific time. So if anybody wants to join us and just help us get ready for Backdrop Live, feel free to find us in Zula.
Okay. There's also one last note here about adding Markdown possibly to some of the Backdrop cms.org sites. But apparently that was covered in the last meeting. So if you're interested in hearing the discussion about that, check out the recording from the previous meeting. Okay. And then we'll go into the 1.20 planning. Speaking of recordings, I feel like it's important that we say or express apologies that last week's meeting, for some reason, the broadcast failed to record to YouTube. We're absolutely certain that we sent it to YouTube, but the actual video file seems to have disappeared into the ether, and we are not sure what happened to it. So it's a bit of a bummer because we covered like 4 issues pretty in depth last week. But what we'll do is we'll do a little bit of a recap on what those issues were before trying to get into some new items. So generally what we're about to do is we're taking a look at the survey results for what community members feel are the most important features to include in Backdrop Core. You can see the survey site at survey.backdropcms.org, and that's has a list of high priority features that people submitted through the forum, and then we did a survey asking like allowing people to vote for the things that they thought was most important. Although that list is not canonical and it's not really special, it's just what people brought up. It happens to be pretty comprehensive as for including things that we've been trying to get done for a long time, some of them all the way back to the original release of Backdrop, and also things that everybody recognizes as being like a high priority thing. So so we're going through that list, even though it's not comprehensive. If you wanted to focus on something else, absolutely is that choice. But our objective here is to kind of, as always, draw attention to particular issues, build enthusiasm for these issues, and try to focus our community's attention onto specific issues so that we can get some of these issues done rather than fragmenting and moving forward but not completing like a dozen different issues. So we'll first go over the items from last week and kind of a quick summary on them. The most popular feature, and this is in order of the features that received the most votes. So the most voted for item was adding field group functionality to core. And the summary points on that one is that I think that the most direct route forward on that one is to put field group module functionality into core essentially as is. The issue has gotten bogged down with ideas of doing like major revamps to the UI and the way that it works. And the kind of outcome of that issue is it's like, well, we should probably just move forward with what we have and then iterate upon it. That issue for fully tracking that is number 647. Next one is allowing file and image uploads multiple file and image uploads, that you could upload bulk images. when adding content. That's issue 130 or 1380. The most promising approach for that issue is that there is a contrib module called HTML5 upload that solves the problem in contrib. And the most likely success route is that if we could take that module's approach and adapt it to core, then that would be a great way to go. We also discussed a little bit about not including a third-party library like DropZone.js because HTML has already matured to the point that multiple file uploads is not really a special thing for browsers to handle. So we'd prefer a direct browser implementation over building a third-party library to do the uploading. Let's see, next up is reference module, adding reference module to core issue 1301. The thing about reference module, there are a couple of caveats there. Reference module as it exists in contrib. So there's a contrib module just called reference singular. That is the module that is written that is targeting to be included in core. The big caveats to its adoption are that we don't have upgrade paths for the various different other types of references. That's user reference and node reference and entity reference, as well as taxonomy term references. So there's 4 different modules that we conceivably need to support in an upgrade path. And that's
I did work on upgrade paths for all 4 of those. I think the big issue isn't that we don't have them. It's a question of like, do we want them? Because some people might prefer to stay on taxonomy term reference fields than entity reference fields.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that we can't like assume that we can move everybody to a new module and have it be automatic. Like it can't be part of update.php. There needs to be an opt-in process to volunteer into those upgrades, because if you have custom code, you know, or views configured, like there's other stuff that ties in. It's not just the migration of the data.
And I think at this point, we also already have contrib versions of all of those. So people probably will want to choose what they want to be on reference, what they don't want to be on reference, which could be a little icky.
Yeah. So I think generally, we were thinking that possibly those upgrades, because it's been the sticking point for so long, maybe we could work on something, leave the upgrades out for the time being, and either delegate that to contrib, work on it as a follow-up, but not have it be a requirement to reference module in core.
Yeah, and I think that there's a point there, because fair enough about D7 moving to Backdrop, but sites that have been built in Backdrop from the scratch, if they start using whatever is available in core, which would be the preferred way, then eventually we'll have less of an issue with the upgrades, or the contrib modules will start getting used less.
Dealing with the upgrades is going to get harder and harder though, because right now they're all written assuming you're coming from Drupal 7, and so they use all the Drupal 7 upgrades with the like update last whatever. As soon as we introduce people who are now running backed up versions of those modules, we now got to support 2 different upgrade paths, one for somebody going from Drupal 7 to Backdrop and one from someone going from Backdrop to Backdrop on the same module switches. So that's going to get really complicated.
Yeah, which is why like upgrade
It's
paths.
stuck.
Yeah, it's stuck, exactly. So to unstick it, the suggestion is that we don't make upgrades as part of the requirement for putting a reference module in core. The next step here for reference module actually is not related to core. It's just purely that the reference module as it exists in contrib has never had an official release. And that has made it so that it's not accessible from the module installer, and it's not on backdropcms.org as a listed module. It's only listed in the contrib repository. And so if we would like to get more testing on it as it exists in contrib, we should probably make an official release of it. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jen?
It does have a release. It was just not named Yeah, we just need to make another one. So we changed the naming convention so that if you added like beta, it wouldn't show up anywhere. And so this is the beta version. So yeah, I can make a release for it if people are comfortable with that.
Well, I think you should check its state first, right?
Yes. If we think it's going to get merged into core soon, what's the downside to doing a contrib release?
Yeah, because then we'll have to take care of the upgrade from that and adding that module to the, I can't remember now what the function is called. I think merged something.
Yeah, backdrop core merged modules
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah, that's what we did for things like path auto and redirect and some other ones. That's like backdrop has special handling that when we put a module into core, it encourages you to remove the old version.
Right. So I'm asking, is there a downside then to releasing it at contrib if we're relatively confident we're going to be moving it into core soon, or hopeful?
I think there are some downsides. It's moderately more work that we need to account for it when it gets moved into core, but I think the benefits outweigh them. That broader testing and getting more feedback on the contrib module is worth the downsides of us needing to accommodate it.
There are 3 issues that are marked as release blockers, so I might check on those and see. These are ones that Mike labeled as release blockers when he was maintaining, so I want to make sure. There's some that seem to be kind of like access related and something that might cause fatal errors. So getting those knocked out would be good before I make release. As people are going to start installing it from the UI, we want to make sure they're not going to break their site in a way that they can't get out of it. But okay.
There's also an older release, an older issue in the reference queue asking for release. So as a starting point, you could refer to that. It's issue 37.
Thanks.
All right. Let's see. And then the last one that we covered last week was adding a recipe project type to backdrop issue 3763. Let's see, I don't have too many notes on here other than we have a bug that we'd like to get fixed, issue 3224, that has to do with running config sync when a module is installed, because that would unblock most of what we've been talking about as recipes. You could implement just simply as a module that included a bunch of config files. Like a recipe would be a module. I think we also mentioned that some of the new functionality we have for adding tags into .info files could also be used to leverage, or could be leveraged to make finding recipes on backdropcms.org easy by going to the modules page and then filtering down to a tag called recipe, and that would find you recipe-like modules. So that's kind of the state on things there, is that recipes wouldn't be a new thing. Potentially for now, they would just be modules that bundle config. So first item is fix the bundling of config with modules, and that is issue 3224. And the second one is exposing the labels on backdropcms.org so that you can find modules that have specified their particular tags in their .info file, which I think there's an issue on backdropcms.org's queue for that, but I don't have it offhand. Tim or Jen, do you guys have additional feedback on that one? Okay. All right. Well, let's get into some of the new ones then. We have lots of time left in the meeting to banter over these next 4 items that were the most popular items in the survey results. The next item that was in there is adding an icon font to core, issue 364. And I would really like to hear people's thoughts on this one.
I know Wes has been doing some work. So even though icon fonts are sort of like the proven solution right now, and there's a bunch of weird, like cutting edge stuff that front-end developers are really excited about, I was really worried about the new stuff just because it sort of goes against our philosophy. But Wes has an example of something that he's working on for Backdrop Core, where he created a SVG-based icon solution for Red Hat, and he mocked up a version of what that might look like for Backdrop 2. And so it looks to me like it solved all of the things that we wanted to have solved by having an icon font in Core, and it might be worth having other people evaluate that too. And so just putting in a font.
Yeah, I had the same sort of thoughts here that icon fonts, they've always been a convenient way to achieve something that has always been kind of like, wow, that's kind of a hack, you know? It's like it's kind of like using Flash for fonts, you know, before you could load fonts. Like I feel like it's a shim to make it so that you can do iconography in a way that is broadly supported across all browsers. So I'm excited about this new idea, but there's other things about icon fonts that people like being able to attach an icon just by adding a particular class, right? That's the thing that people love so much about Font Awesome, is that it has a very consistent naming convention. You say FA, you know, dash whatever the icon type is, and then it's like, bam, you can make the icon really easily. So I think the ease of use is something that we may want to preserve, even if we don't use an actual icon font. And I think that's the approach that Wes has been taking, right? It's like, it's not using an icon font anymore where you're loading a custom font on the page, it's using SVGs, but it still has the naming convention mechanism of an icon font. Does that sound right, Jen?
Yeah, it's a little bit different because he's not doing it like he's actually creating a new HTML element, a web component. So it is going to be a little like you'd actually have to include that element, but it does have the same like standard class naming convention, and because they're SVGs, you have the option to like color them depending on how crazy you want to get with your CSS. But yeah, it's sort of like I think having the tools there for people to use on their own site is going to be beneficial. It's not quite the same thing as an icon font where you can just stick a class on anything.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now in this issue as a code pen that kind of proof of concepts it. And yeah, making a custom HTML element is a little bit
It's
unusual.
New. It's new, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the kind of thing where you know, we could get really excited about it and put it in core, and then it could like die next year, and we'd be like, well, we've got it in core and we tried something new. But you know, icon fonts have been around for a long time. You could just say, well, that's the standard, we're going to put it in core. But then, you know, it's this constantly evolving web problem that we're always going to have. So worth considering.
Well, this I mean, even making new custom elements isn't exactly new. You know, we've had Brian talk about the hacks editor at like the last Backdrop Live, and he's been talking about hacks for the last 3 or 4 years. You know, and so that's entirely based on making custom HTML elements. So this technology isn't exactly new, but yeah, I share your concern a little bit that it could be different. One thing that actually works almost in this system's favor, however, is that by making it a dedicated HTML element, it just doesn't suddenly show up absolutely everywhere throughout your entire site like Font Awesome does. Font Awesome actually can be problematic that people can start adding Font Awesome icons in the middle of their body text because it's just, you know, an I tag with a class on it. And so one of the other concerns about icon fonts is that it basically would be so broad and be so accessible absolutely everywhere that you would never be able to remove it. from core. If we put it in core, we can never take it back out because people's content would start depending on it. And I think that that wouldn't be the case with something like this, that that like we could probably make these systems available in Backdrop core, but it'd be pretty unlikely that someone would use it in their text formats.
I mean, I think if someone wants an icon in their text format, they're going to put it in their text regardless of what tools we give them to do it. And the good thing about having Font Awesome is that it's easy for them to do that.
Well, the good and bad thing about it, I would say. So
The Doug disagrees.
I think I think that the main use cases for core, like when it comes to core, it would be the admin bar icons that we currently have, and then things like the dashboard icons and the main configuration page, like the /admin config. But yeah.
Right. So what we want icon fonts for in core is for our administrative interfaces, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also maybe the status messages, like the ticks, the eyes, and the exclamation marks for the errors and the warnings.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm not quite sure where to say, like, you know, what approach we should take on this, because we're still really we're not really at implementation point yet. We're still kind of in the brainstorming phase here. So I don't really think that we can say, like, yeah, let's go forward, like, on this one for 1.20, because we don't really know if that experimentation and discussion will really, be finished in time. So I think for now, if you're interested in that sort of thing, take a look at issue 364. Provide feedback to the work that has been happening there, and put in your opinions as to how you think icon fonts or icons just in general should be implemented, and how they would be used, like your preferences for the way that you would want to use icons in core.
Yeah, and I think the other use case, at least in Drupal land, is for custom menus. I think there's a contrib module that does that, allows you to prepend icons to your menu items.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next one, which is automatic updates, issue 2018. So automatic updates is in a number of various states. This issue 2018 is a meta issue that has a number of smaller issues inside of it. Right now, this is effectively on my plate to kind of take the lead on implementation here. Where we are on this is we have a number of issues that have been started, like issue 3714. That's digital signatures, that John Franklin put together a mechanism for having backdropcms.org sign packages, so that when a Backdrop site downloads those packages, it can verify that they're real packages that came from backdropcms.org. So it's a good security improvement. That issue is not blocked on anything other than continuing to do some development work on it. Let's see, digital signatures on packages. There's also an issue, I'm actually surprised that I'm not seeing it here, that there's a Drupal 7 module that actually a Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 module for enabling automatic updates within Drupal. And that module primarily provides a whole set of pre-flight checks to make sure that it's safe to do an automatic update. It does things like checking if any core files have been modified, checking to make sure permissions are all set up correctly, all of these things that make it so that Backdrop could smartly like check to make sure that running an automatic update was safe in the first place. And so we have the opportunity to take a look at that module and adopt a lot of the work that has been done there into Backdrop's implementation. There are also, in theory, that module supposedly does the actual automatic updating, which is an unanswered question in ours. We have a issue 414 that is the automatic part of the update. And the big question there is, how does update.php get run? Because right now, even with Backdrop Core, when you have Backdrop Core self-update, you still have to go to update.php, like as an administrator, to actually run database upgrades. So figuring out how Drupal has solved that problem would be a big boost towards this project. So if this one it doesn't really have anyone working on it at the moment, but issue 414, if you'd like to start working on adapting some of those things from the Drupal project, that would be a good place to join in. Let's see, Olaf mentioned before the call got started, there's also just a small bug that issue 3008 covers symlinks, that if you have a symlink to your document root and then have Backdrop inside of that, that self-updates currently don't work. And if self-updates don't work, then automatic updates definitely won't either. And so that is just a bug that has a pull request that could use some review. Yeah, and Greg actually also asked me before the meeting, like whether or not we should solicit someone else as being an advocate for automatic updates besides myself. My take on that is that at least for things like package signatures, in which I've done a lot of work already, myself and John Franklin, who wrote the original code, I'm committed to continuing and finishing at least that portion of automatic updates. So I'd like to at least still be mostly responsible for automatic updates, but I definitely would love some more developer time from people that are interested in some of these other issues that are also related to automatic updates, like pulling in the stuff from the Drupal project would be a great place to have some help. Do you guys have any thoughts or anything else to say about automatic updates? Okay, well, we'll go to the next one then. We've got about 15 minutes left. So the next one is exposing fields to visibility conditions within layout module. That's issue 4728. I like this issue because I get to punt it to someone else. Because Jen, this was an issue that you advocated for last release. And you know, it's in the top 10 list of features that people think should be included in core sooner. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about you know, the state of this and if we're likely to see some activity for the next release.
So I think this issue is actually pretty close. We already have a contrib module that does most of what we need, and we have a core patch that I started that improves a little bit on the user interface. And so I think all we need to do is make the contrib module not a module, like make it leverage layout instead of being its own modules plugin, and then add the user interface improvements. So it's definitely likely to happen. In terms of the amount of work involved, it's not a lot. Somebody just needs to make time to do it. Mostly myself there I'm snarking at, but yeah, I'd say it's likely.
And for this one, let's see, there is already a pull request.
It needs work state though, because it's not comprehensive.
Got it. Okay, yeah, it's only field has value visibility condition, not like what other, are we planning on adding more things other than field has value visibility condition, like field is equal to or
I
something like
think
that?
the contrib module uses the views plugin for that, where you get like is equal to, is empty, is not empty, contains, like all of those options.
Yeah, which is a big feature. I mean, it would have a lot of flexibility, but that also means it has a kind of a complex interface, just like Views does. Yeah, and so what are we shooting for here? Are we shooting for doing the full contrib solution?
That's what I was hoping for, yeah, with just a little user interface cleanup on it.
Cool. Okay. Anything else you want to say about that one?
Well, maybe let me just ask, having not looked closely at this, this is basically, so we already have field blocks that we can set visibility conditions on. So this is basically just letting you set visibility conditions on the actual node page for individual fields. Is that right?
No, it adds a new visibility condition that allows you to test the value of a field. So like if you have a field called a color and you only want to show a block if that field says color's blue.
Okay. Okay. But again,
Or
that would
like
be set, it would be set in the node configuration or the field configuration for a content type.
It would be everywhere there's currently a condition, which is usually on a block or on a layout.
Okay.
But it's testing
Could
the
show-
value of a field.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could potentially say like have a date field on your node, and then on the node layout, you could say only show this block if the date is after a certain
Today.
time. And I have no idea if date is actually something that is included in the initial implementation, but yeah, that's the idea.
I don't think so. And I don't think that the current value, it only well, I don't know. I'll have to look at the contrib module, but there is some issue about like a field's keys. Like it by default for text, they're almost always value, but like for date, it's different. And for address, it's different. For email, it's different. And I noticed there was a problem in the Drupal solution where email fields weren't getting checked. So I'll check and see if that problem exists for Backdrop too.
Okay. Well, the last one we don't have too much to discuss on because it's really getting close to being solved, and that is the feature to add a file name filter to the media library dialog, issue 3293. This has seen a lot of progress in the past week. Laren is the advocate for it, but he was also the advocate for last release, and he has created a new pull request that effectively solves the problem, which is great. It makes it so that any exposed filters that you add to the view now work correctly. So in a way, this is not necessarily even a new feature improvement. This is actually could be like a bug fix that exposed filters don't work right now in the media library dialog, and his pull request fixes that. So it's a bug. It could be considered a bug fix. There's a question of whether or not it's going to be likely to impact people's sites, in which case we might want to wait till 1.20 anyway, even if it's only a bug fix, if it has an impact on like the way that people have themed their sites or something. So that issue has been moving forward. I tested it out this week. It works absolutely great, exactly like you would expect. And so I think that one at the very least will be in 1.20 because it's perfect basically. So thanks, Lauren, for putting in some time and figuring that one out. I also understand that it was inspired by some of BW Panda's work. So nice. I'm glad that has all panned out. So that's it for the items that I pulled from the survey. We also have some opportunity here to talk about other things that, if just anyone present wants to mention their favorite issue, then we can do that now. I see that Greg is starting to put something in here.
Before before Greg starts talking, on a general note, like to mention that this is the 1.20. I put on my outreach hat, the 1.20 release, which is, it has that round number magic, which, you know, it feels like a big release because it's the 20th. I don't know if that's even true, because it might be the 21st, depending on how you count, right?
Yeah.
So, but still, it's got the 2.0. And, you know, I sometimes ask that question, like, there's different, you know, there's what we're most, it's developers excited about adding to core, but there's also the PR value. Like for 1.20, what issue might we be able to leverage for some outreach and PR? And I think automatic updates might be a good one for that. I'd be curious what people think might have the most sort of outreach appeal or PR appeal for, you know, this could be sort of any release, but for the 1.20, maybe a little more so. I'm just looking for feedback on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. The automatic updates is a big thing. Field group as well, and reference. These are the three that I think are key. Reference is already something that is a Drupal 8 and beyond core feature. So if someone is comparing products, they might bring that argument into the discussion.
Yeah, as far as PR value, I think automatic updates has the greatest value out of these. Although I think reference is probably more important, like on the whole. But because reference module has, like, if you're comparing us to Drupal, reference module has been in Drupal for all of Drupal 8. I don't think it has quite the same impact as saying, like, you know, we're ahead of the curve on something. I guess WordPress is on automatic updates, so we're not ahead of the curve there either. Yeah. But yeah, but I think the highest PR value is in automatic updates, but the highest user value is probably in reference. So yeah, I would probably lean more towards like automatic updates if we were going to pick one for this release for 1.20. Anybody else? I like your thought process though, Tim. Yeah, the 2.0, even though it's not 2.0, it'll definitely catch a lot of people's eyes that 1.20 looks an awful lot like, you know, version 2. Let's see, Greg, you have a couple of additional ideas for things that weren't mentioned from the survey, or at least not in these top 8. Do you want to cover one or two of them?
Yeah, so the safe drafting core, this was something that Peter VW Panda intended to work on for this release, but due to life and work obligations said that he would not advocate anymore. So if he indeed doesn't have time, I'm keen on starting that one. We already have an issue. I don't have the issue number handy right now, where we are splitting the help text for the publishing options. So this is a start to sort of like unblock or make things clear for Safe Draft. So basically we should have those options reflected in the submit button for saving the node. Yeah, this is something that I wanted to do for like a long time, same as in merging the update pages. And then the other point that I have is, yep, that's the one, 3.1.5.7. That's the issue. Thanks, Nate. And then the other thing is it ties to the automatic updates. And I was looking at the automatic updates contrib module for Drupal, and they have 2 phases. And phase 1 does mention being able to roll back. Oh no, sorry, phase 2 of it mentions testing and rollback features. So if we are to provide automatic updates, we need to also make sure that people, if something goes wrong, are able to revert or have a recent backup. I know that most people would design their infrastructure to take automatic updates of their database, I guess, and files if they have automatic core updates on. but we can't rely on them actually doing that. So we have a step even in during the running update PHP, where it says stop now, just go and back up your database and files because it's recommended. So it would be great during that point to not have the users go and do another task and then come back. It would be great to have a checkbox and say, yes, please take a backup, and that'd be the default. So yeah, that's something that I would really like to get in core. And on top of that, the backup and migrate module, which is in Contrib now, and it offers that functionality, is the most popular module in Backdrop Contrib at the moment. So yeah.
I'm going to use this moment to point out that it's also broken right now. So I don't know if having it in core would make it more or less likely. Well, it wouldn't make it more likely. I don't know if it would make it less likely that it would be broken. But
yeah, and the other thing I did not add config management improvements. I think Tim, you added that. Is the discussion that we had last night more or not?
Well, we briefly talked about the config management stuff last week. It's just something that I've had some Drupal developers complain to me about. I keep running into. I feel like it's a bit of a problem, and tying into the backup and migrate. The big thing, one of the big frustrations is like you can schedule back. Well, I'm sure there are ways to do this, but I can use backup and migrate module to automatically back up my database and my file directory. But if I lose my config and I haven't manually backed that up, I'm screwed. And either getting that into the backup and migrate module, which would be one option, or getting it something into core to sort of make it easier to keep your config backed up.
I'm
Would be
curious
nice.
if there's a priority at all on having the backup portion only. Like, is that like a first step, or is it like the only
Yes.
step possibly, where it's like just provide the backups, don't provide the imports, because the restoration has a huge set of problems just by itself. But the backup portion, if it's really just like saving some files and then there's a documentation page on how to restore from it, then that would be a much smaller problem to solve.
Yeah, and it could be left to Contrib, the restoring bit, if people want to automate it or provide a UI for it.
Sure, I've never thought of that before, but I think most of us don't need, we want backups all the time and hope we never need to use them. And so it might be a big step forward to know that you have a backup. And then if you need to use it, maybe it's acceptable to send people and say, okay, you're going to need to use install backup and migrate or something to do it.
Just a backup module. It wouldn't be backup and migrate anymore. Just
Yes.
backup module.
Right.
Which would make the a need for the backup and migrate module to become migrate. So there would be no backup. It would be just
restore and migrate.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Or maybe not. Like backup and migrate, the way that it is written, it does a lot of work to like connect to the database, like through Backdrop's APIs and stuff like that, which makes it actually like database agnostic. And so because it came from Drupal 7, where it's like it needed to work with everything, the core implementation could be quite a bit different. And so backup and migrate could still be valuable potentially as like it has its own backup and import mechanism that might be more comprehensive or more easy or something like that. So maybe it would still do everything. And Backdrop Core's backup module could potentially be like have a different format for its backups that are like geared towards manual imports rather than automatic ones like backup and migrate provides. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there that backup and migrate would probably stay backup and migrate even if we had something in core.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe potentially we could still have both, like if backup module is doing the thing on updates, when it runs an update, it makes a backup. And backup and migrate is still used for like moving between sites, something like that, like different problems being solved.
Yep.
I think a backup feature in core also has some PR value to like end users, to people who are building their own site. I think it's less popular amongst developers who have their own solutions to this. A lot of us that build a lot of sites maybe rely less on backup and migrate, but if you just want to build your own site, having that in core could be a good solution.
And I think that Luke has brought this up many times as his favorite, that he sort of like tests things on a platform. It could be Pantheon, it could be a demo site, and then they want to back that up for whenever they have time again to test things, right? So they can restore them. So yeah, I brought this site into a status where I like it. Export everything.
Cool. Let's see, we are at the top of the hour. There's one more thing to mention as a like ongoing thing, and that's telemetry. Telemetry isn't particularly slated for 1.20, but it is our only initiative right now that is like a long running thing. And telemetry is not in a bad place as far as like getting it core ready, especially the core module itself that would just collect data and start sending it up to backdropcms.org. So that telemetry, let's see, do we have a main issue for this? Issue 285 is the telemetry meta issue. And let's see if that's the best spot. Yes, that looks like that's the best spot for like what the most up-to-date state of things is. So telemetry is also like a good candidate there for like a, 80% of the work is done, and we just have little bits here and there to actually get it all wired up and completed.
I'd like to point out that in terms of prioritizing issues, there's a couple of different factors. One is PR value. One is what is the real use, but the other is how close to complete are they, right? There are some issues that might have high PR value and could very easily be completed just because they're so close already, and that's something else to think about. The config recipes is an example of that, where it might not be the most important feature, but it's one that in theory is pretty close. And there's some others like that we talked about that are.
Yep, totally agree. Yeah, that recipes issue, the bug fix is issue 3224.
Mm-hmm.
That's in a pull request that needs review. Like that could get fixed tomorrow, if it got reviewed and tested, then we could merge that in, and that's not even dependent necessarily on a minor version because it's a bug. So
right.
But maybe we would want to use it, like you say, Tim, maybe for some PR value, nonetheless,
right. Yes. Well, so my understanding is that if that pull request or that bug is fixed, that in a sense we have the ability to create these recipe modules already. So there would be nothing preventing us from doing it, but maybe we could announce this as a new feature in 2.0 or 1.2.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, as Nate is saying, time is up. We need to wrap this up. But, for me, it's, what we can do to facilitate and help people focus on some of these issues. So I would say if anybody's excited, we shouldn't forget about our advocacy. We mentioned the advocacy program. The idea is for advocates is that you just pick an issue that you feel passionate about, even if you can't solve it yourself, and just help keep it on our agenda, keep it up to date. And so that's one way you could take what we talked about today and implement it into action, is just become an advocate for one of these issues and sort of keep pushing it forward as much as you can and encouraging others to work on it.
Yeah, and also related to advocates, what we had been doing in weekly meetings was we encouraged the advocate to be at the weekly meeting so that they could give a status update on their particular issues. It's been proposed that we start changing the format of our weekly meetings. And for the past 2 weeks, we've been doing these planning meetings, so that hasn't factored in. But starting next week, we haven't made a decision on this, so maybe there's actually a question to Tim, Jen, and Greg. Like, should we start pivoting our weekly meetings to the new format of them being almost more like working sessions, where those people that need help on particular issues or want to do deep dives on particular issues, we're going to basically have open sessions where we're going to have people come forward. They'll hopefully put into the agenda a little bit of preparatory information so that people can get familiar before the meetings. And then during the meetings, we'll just like discuss and try to work out the problems in particular issues like real time.
Yeah.
So
we've been doing
that's
the other format for quite a long time, so let's try that. Let's give it a go.
okay.
And particularly for Doc Wilmot, when he watches this recording later on, I did post a question on Zulip with regards to would that new format sort of like answer the concerns that he posted with regards to circling around the same things without moving on during these meetings.
Yeah, and what will get bumped is the status report on like the issues that are in 1.20 and prioritize issues that are in like 119. Instead, we'll just be like going on pretty much whatever issues people bring forward, unless there are no things to discuss. Like if no one comes forward, then we'll probably fall back to doing the status update as we had been doing for major issues in 119 and 120.
I'm happy to try this new format. My concern is that my understanding of this format is that basically the main change is that rather than items showing up automatically week after week, is that unless somebody specifically nominates an issue for a particular meeting, we don't necessarily talk about it. And if we talk about something one week, that doesn't mean it's automatically on the agenda the following week, right? It has to get renominated each week. And my concern is that we're going to lose, my two concerns about this. One is that we lose attention to some of these issues that are kind of important, but not making progress. And two, my other concern is that we're not going to have a full agenda, but we can figure that out. We'll find ways to fill the agenda. So.
Yeah, there's also a concern that I have that we might have 3 people bring issues and we only get through one of them. And that could be a frustrating experience for people that hope to get their issue talked about. And then we have a fight about whose issue we're going to talk about. I don't think it'll come to that. But yeah, I definitely have some concerns. But I think we should try it, and see how it goes.
Okay.
Okay. Greg, do you have any last things to say? Okay. All right. Well, we'll call it a meeting then. Thank you, everybody here for being present. Thank you for people out there on the internet that watch these weekly calls. Fingers crossed this video will post and everybody will be able to watch it because we covered a lot today. So thank you very much, everybody out there. And thank you. See you guys next week.
Thanks. Bye.